Today, I want to talk about breast cancer. This is a big ongoing problem. 1 in 8 women in the United States will develop invasive breast cancer. 2 out of 3 of those women are over the age of 55, but more and more women that are in their 40s are developing breast cancer. And because I'm a holistic licensed healthcare practitioner specialized in women's health and hormones, this comes into my wheelhouse because I'm doing a lot of hormone testing. Did you know that 80% of breast cancer is estrogen receptor driven, meaning it's driven by an imbalance of estrogen? So that's something that we can test, and that's something that we can also prevent, which is why I wanted to bring my mom on because, first of all, well, we don't have a risk of breast cancer in our family, do we?
No, there's no history.
So backing up a little bit out of the backstory, tell us a little bit about, you give us like a health background for you.
Well, I've always been pretty healthy, thankfully, and I've always exercised and tried to eat right. And the more we learned about nutrition, the more we changed the diet so that it was anti-cancer, anti-inflammation. And since I retired, I got the stress out of my life. And we've been working on getting rid of chemicals in the home and avoiding the environmental chemicals. So I thought I was doing as good as I could do.
Yeah.
No symptoms, no nothing like that. I just got curious about where my hormones were. Since going through menopause, it's always a question what the levels are.
Yeah. So it was in 2023 that you first decided to do a Dutch test with me and test your hormones. And I mean, we obviously expected them to be a little low because you have already gone through menopause. But what we didn't expect was your breast cancer risk was high.
Yes, that was quite shocking.
Now, this is something I'm going to show you what this means. First of all, why does this matter? Well, 1 in 8 women in the United States develops invasive breast cancer. 2 out of 3 cases occur in women over the age of 55, but rates are rising among women in their 40s. 80% of breast cancer is estrogen receptor positive, meaning that estrogen is involved in this cancer and driving this cancer. Now, I'm not saying that estrogen in and of itself is bad. It's not, but this is unchecked, imbalanced estrogen. When you have an estrogen dominance, that can drive this cancer. So that's 80% of the cases of breast cancer. Let's talk about estrogen for a minute here. So we tend to say estrogen as if it's just one thing, but there's actually 3 types of estrogen: estrone, estradiol, and estriol. Now let's give a little background on hormones, because when we're talking about measuring levels, I think a lot of women tend to think, oh, I have estrogen and they're just the levels that I have, and that's kind of all that it is. Actually, there's 3 very important steps when it comes to hormones and understanding how they work in our body. And this is happening again and again every single day. 1, we make hormones. 2, they do their job. And then 3, they become waste and they have to get metabolized out and excreted literally through our metabolic process. They get deactivated by the liver and they get metabolized out through our intestines and come out and when we go to the bathroom. All 3 steps have to be functioning. All 3 pathways have to be open for us to have a healthy hormonal balance. And if there's a blockage or if any one of these 3 steps is not working, that can lead to major hormonal imbalances and problems. So in this case, we're particularly looking at not only what are your levels of estrogen and is it doing its job, but when it's done and when it's waste, is your body able to break it down and metabolize it out and excrete it appropriately? So, this is extremely important. And the problem is normal testing. So, when you go in and you go to the doctor and you get tested and you get blood work ran, normal testing does not measure all 3 steps. They're only measuring step 1. What are your levels? They're not looking at the other 2 steps to see how are they reacting in your body and are they getting deactivated, metabolized, and excreted out appropriately, because that's just as important. In fact, when it comes to cancer and breast cancer, that's extremely important to measure. That's why I love doing the Dutch test, which is the Dutch hormone test. This is the gold standard in the functional space. And the reason why is because it's a urine test. Not only does it measure very accurately the levels of all of your sex hormones, it shows us how they're reacting in the body and are they getting broken down and metabolized appropriately. This, especially when it comes to estrogen, is so important because this is how we can predict and protect you from the risk of breast cancer. All right, so I wanted to use my mom as an example. This is my mom's Dutch test. We don't have breast cancer in our family. So we didn't think she was at a high risk. She wasn't having any symptoms, but back in 2023, we wanted to get her levels measured just to see where she was at. She had already gone through menopause many years ago. She's in her 70s now at the time of testing, but we just wanted to see, she's very health conscious. So I wanted to see where are her hormones at. Now, across the top, you'll see the three types of estrogen that I explained: estrone, estradiol, and estriol. So those are measuring her levels. And then you will see the three different pathways. There's a green arrow, a red arrow, and a blue arrow. I call them the different metabolism pathways. Now, when hormones get metabolized out, they can take a few different routes, almost like, you're driving somewhere, you can take a few different routes to get there. There's the green pathway, which is good, red pathway, which is bad, and the blue pathway, which is more neutral. The reason why I say that is anytime the body's metabolizing something out, it likes that metabolite to be very stable. The body likes things that are stable. What it doesn't like is things that are unstable and reactionary, right? Kind of like you taking out the trash. You don't want your trash to be reactionary. You don't want your trash to be leaking or causing a mess or being messy, right? You want it to be a nice, neutralized, neat little package that's easy to take out. Your body's the same way. So this page is showing us how well is your body neutralizing that trash so it can be taken out in a neat way or in a messy way. Well, the green pathway is the neat way. The red pathway is the messy way. And the blue pathway is more neutral. So the pie chart on the right, which I have circled, is going to show us the percentages. Now, we expect a certain percentage to go down each pathway. We expect 60 to 80% of estrogen metabolism to happen down the green pathway. My mom has 63.4%. So, on the lower end, but she's still in the range. We expect 7.5 to 11% to go down the red pathway. My mom's at 27.7. That's quite elevated. This is one of the most elevated numbers that I've seen for the red pathway. Now, why does this matter? The green metabolite is stable. The red metabolite is unstable. And if it's not detoxified properly, it can bind to and damage DNA, which can lead to things like cancer, especially female cancer like breast cancer. So when we are sending too much of this estrogen metabolite down the red pathway and we're forming these unstable reactionary metabolites, our risk for cancer increases if this is high. So at 27.7%, she's way over the expected range. She's at a higher risk for an estrogen-driven cancer. Okay, so seeing this, I was like, okay, we got to get serious. We got to get you on a protocol to rebalance your hormones and specifically to support this pathway so that you do not have an elevated level going down the red pathway. And so I gave her some natural things, quite easy and simple things that you can do actually to shift away from that red pathway, send more down the green pathway, the protective pathway, and less down the red to bring down the levels of that unstable metabolite, right? All right, so just a close up here so you can really see the pie chart. The normal range is 7.5 to 11. Her red pathway, the dangerous metabolite, was 27.7. So this was quite elevated, right? So I put her on the protocol. All right, year and a half later, she retests. First of all, she told me that she was feeling great. She felt lots of improvements overall in her life and health in general, her mood, her energy. She just had this renewed vigor. She was happier, a lighter mood. So she had all these improvements, but we wanted to see, let's look at the numbers, right? Let's retest and see how is this translating inside your body. So her levels overall had improved. And if you look at the red pathway here, let me zoom in. It decreased and went back down into the normal healthy range. So that healthy range of 7.5 to 11, she went from 27.7% down to 8.5 in just a year and a half based off of a simple and completely natural protocol that I had given her. So this is proof that we were able to greatly decrease her risk. And again, this matters so much because if 80% of breast cancer is estrogen receptor positive, if you have this type of valuable information, you can do something about it to protect yourself or a loved one. So that's why I love the Dutch hormone test, because it helps you predict and protect from the risk of breast cancer in a way that other testing does not, because it uses urine and it measures metabolites. So it's getting the full step of the process, right? All of those 3 steps. Because when we know what's out of balance, we can take measures to rebalance it naturally and help protect you.
So I think a big thing for a lot of women is they don't realize this. We just kind of think like, oh, I have too much estrogen, or I don't have enough estrogen, or it's kind of a mystery. We just kind of think like we have estrogen and that's that. Women don't necessarily realize that not only do your actual levels matter, but every single day that hormone gets created to go do its job, and then it has to get excreted and metabolized out, and that is just as important as having enough hormone levels to begin with. So when you have estrogen, you want to have good levels, you want to make sure it's doing its job, and then you want to make sure that your body's able to break it down and metabolize it out. And so if that second step or that third step of the process isn't working, it can create major problems, even necessarily maybe even bigger than just not having enough hormone itself. So in your case, your estrogen levels were low, which wasn't surprising because, having already gone through menopause. But who would have thought it wasn't metabolizing out appropriately? And because of that, you were at a much more higher risk for breast cancer.
Yeah, well, I was pretty shocked, to say the least, because I thought I was so healthy and everything was going well. And then I was very surprised about this process.
Yeah. And it made me just so grateful that we did this, because you weren't having any symptoms. It doesn't run in the family like we have caught this otherwise? I don't think that we would have.
Probably not.
No, I mean,
Because all my blood tests on wellness checks, everything comes out good. There was no suspicion of anything.
Well, right,
happening.
because when you run, because I run all the same lab tests that you do if you go to the doctor and you get like your annual physical and blood work along with it. I run those labs all the time. That doesn't show how well your body is metabolizing out excess estrogen. Even if your levels are low to begin with, that pathway needs to be clear for your body to clear it out, because anything that gets like backlogged is like a traffic jam in your body considers that toxic. It then becomes a toxin that your body's trying to get rid of and deal with. So I think that that's a big missing piece. We think, oh, I went to the doctor, I did a full checkup, I got all my labs done, they said everything's fine. Well, they're not measuring this backside of the story, right? They're just measuring the front end. How are your levels? They're not measuring the back end. Is it getting metabolized out, or is it accumulating in toxic excess? Because that's what breast cancer is, right? Everyone thinks, oh, estrogen is, it's so bad and it's estrogen-driven cancer. Well, estrogen in and of itself is not bad at all. We need that as women to be healthy. It actually protects us, but it's unchecked estrogen. It's this toxic buildup that your body isn't able to get rid of fast enough that then causes damage, right? When it's in healthy balance, that's what we need.
I'm glad we caught it.
Yeah, so what we discovered from the testing, as you saw, was that initially your red pathway was at a 27.7%. Now that's much higher than the normal range. That was one of the highest I've ever seen, actually, on a Dutch test, and I've run lots of Dutch tests. So in order to get that down, we had to take some measures. Now the good news is you can do this completely naturally. Once we know what's going on, we know how to shift those pathways. So I was able to come up with a natural care plan for her to help shift that metabolism from that red pathway back over to the green safe pathway to help bring those levels down. So what was that experience like for you?
So I started on the bioidentical hormones and the protocol from Abby, and it was easy, just a matter of taking some capsules and using some gel on my skin. And I noticed that I also started to feel better. And that was the other surprise to me is you don't know how bad you feel until you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And Abby and the rest of the family said that I was much happier. I didn't think there was any problem with
Big
that.
mood improvement.
And so everything shifted. And it's so subtle that you don't notice it at first. And then pretty soon it creeps up on you and think, oh my gosh, I feel so much better than I did before.
Mm.
So we went a little over a year, maybe about a year.
It was like a year and a half.
And I wanted to retest. So we retested, and then it showed that my hormones were in much better balance, and I was no longer in that red zone.
We got your healthy levels up, but then the red zone came way down. So you were at 27.7, and we got it down to 8.5, which was well in the healthy range.
Yeah. So that, not only am I happier, I'm really happy because now I don't really have to worry about the breast cancer part of it, and that's a really good feeling.
I mean,
it was such a simple test to do.
Right. It's really easy. And it gave us so much valuable information. And like I was saying, when you think about how 80% of breast cancer is estrogen receptor driven, you would have been at risk for that had we not done the test and taken those steps.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're not at any type of elevated risk for it. So just knowing that we could positively influence your health that way in a non-invasive, things that only improved your health, right? It was with natural supplements and herbs, things we did to improve your overall health, improve your overall mood. You saw improvement in every area.
Mm-hmm.
And we reduced your risk during that time. So within just a year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I just wanted to share this because for me, knowing that, I don't want to sit here and say I saved your life, but this is a life-saving thing. This is a big deal. If I like working on the side of prevention. Of course, this can help outcomes once a woman has already gone through cancer. I've done that with women as well. But the best thing is prevention, right? So having the knowledge, having the tool to give you this type of valuable knowledge so that you can take the measures to prevent something like this. And, it's painless. It's not even that expensive. It's completely natural. And it's life-changing.
Yeah, and the scary thing is that my conventional primary care doctor had no idea about the Dutch test or how to interpret it, and she was very positive about the results and just said to keep on doing what I was doing and keep on working with Abby because Abby's the one that knows how to tweak the medications and to keep the numbers in the right area, where the conventional doctor really had no idea because they're not trained in that.
No, they're not trained in that. And that's a pretty positive reaction. A lot of them get really suspicious.
Yes. Well, I will say that I changed doctors to find one that was open to that because my previous doctor really chastised me for doing something like this and tried to scare me, saying that I was going to get cancer and have a stroke. And
whereas we were decreasing your risk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And if she put me on the synthetic hormones, that is what causes the cancer and the stroke, not the bioidenticals.
Right. And I think there's so much, I'm glad you brought that up because I think there's so much misinformation out there. The synthetic version of HRT, there are a lot more risks that are not the case with the bioidentical natural hormones, which are the ones that we use. So I always make sure to use the natural ones. They don't carry the same risks it's not apples to apples. You really can't compare them that way. So when they say, oh, there's an elevated risk of cancer or stroke, yes, maybe with the synthetic ones, not with the natural bioidenticals.
And that's what most of the doctors recommend. So just be ready for what your primary care physician has to say about it because they're a little bit leery because they're not, as I say, they're not trained in it.
Right. And I think that's why it's important that women have this knowledge, that they understand we're not just looking at where are your levels of estrogen, where are your levels of hormones, but how are they acting and reacting in your body, and how are they getting metabolized and excreted, and is that whole process holistically functioning?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most allopathic doctors are only measuring the front end, like we were saying. They're not measuring the whole process, and they don't understand, because they're not trained in this, why it's so important to measure the entire process, especially when you're looking at something like breast cancer risk.
Yes, absolutely. And I will admit, I worked in the laboratory for years and years and years and testing hormones like this. And we never were able to test the metabolites, nor did we learn about that either.
Well, right, because most, when you talk about standard blood testing and lab work, it's blood, it's plasma. And so you're not measuring metabolites. You're only measuring what's actively circulating in the blood. And so, but to have a full picture, you want to look at the metabolites. That's why the Dutch test is a urine test, because we can actually measure, not only can we measure hormones accurately, but we can measure all the metabolites. And that just gives us so much information about that full picture of how they're working in the body.
Yes, I'm really glad I did it, because that gives me a lot of peace of mind now.
Yeah, I am too. So we just wanted to share that to help other women, because knowledge is power. And this is something that we can do so much to prevent. So when we know that there's a problem, we know what to do to fix it and heal it naturally. So I just wanted other women to know that, because this made a huge difference in our lives. And we hope that it can make a big difference in yours or someone you know as well.